Inspector. I need to inspect something. I need to inspect my Unity game. And in order to do so efficiently, I need attributes. And that's what you're going to learn in this video. You're going to learn how to use attributes in order to make your inspector look amazing and make your life a lot easier when it comes to working in Unity and with the editor and with your inspector. Okay, so all of the good stuff, we're going to build that in this video. 15 different keywords that are relevant when it comes to using the inspector and improving the inspector experience with your scripts. So let's dive right into it. Let's go. In order to demonstrate those attributes, I'm going to create a 3D object here, which is going to be a sphere. And in this sphere, I want to have a script because that's exactly where I want to display all of those attributes and what we are going to need them for. So I'm going to create a new script for this and then edit that script. Let's start with the header. So here we have the sphere variable, which is the header. That's the header text that I have used. And underneath I have this little variable called ball. And by the way, this is Unity Monday. So if you're interested in Unity, definitely check out our content every Monday. And if you're interested in any of the other topics you can see here, of course, check out those videos as well. And please don't forget to subscribe and like this video. How do we add that to our script so it's visible within our inspector? It's very simple. We're just using the header within the square brackets, and then within our rounded brackets and within quotation marks, we enter the text that should be displayed. In this case, it's sphere variable. And underneath, we need a public variable that will be displayed inside of our inspector. You can make this a little bit more appealing by adding a bunch of dashes, for example, or in my case, equal signs. And then it will be a lot more visible, as you can see here. Now let's say we want to have some space between this capsule variable and this capsule text as well as the ball. You can see there is a little bit of padding already, but what if we want to extend that and have our own say about how big it should be? Then we can use the space attribute. So here you can see again, in square brackets, you have the space keyword, and then within the rounded brackets, you enter the value that you want to have as pixel distance or as padding in pixels. So this is going to create a padding of 50 pixels towards the top of header and then 50 pixels underneath header. Here you can see the result. 50 pixels towards the bottom, 50 towards the top. All right, now let's look at the tooltip attribute. This attribute allows us to add a little tooltip to a variable. So once I hover over it, it will display a little tooltip, as you can see here. In order to achieve that, you just have to use the tooltip keyword, and within the brackets, you enter the text that you want to display once the mouse hovers over this variable that comes up afterwards. So in our case, the capsule position. Sometimes you want to enter a value for example, the speed or for a certain variable that you have, and you want it to be within a range. Well, if you want that, then you can use the range attribute. This creates this beautiful little slider that we can use here. And as you can see, I can just select a value between 0 and 25. In order to achieve that, I can simply use the range attribute and the range keyword, as you can see here, and enter the two values. So where does it start from and what's the maximum value? So minimum and maximum values here. And by the way, if you like this video, then please leave a like ASAP. And if you love the video, then subscribe, because we're going to build a lot more cool stuff in the next few weeks and months and hopefully years. All right, so sub2tutorials.eu. And if you really love this video and you like the way I teach and explain things, then check out my course. The link is in the description below and you get a huge discount, and you're going to learn everything you need to know about Unity game development, and you're going to build a lot of cool games along the way. So hope to see you there. Let's get back to the video. In case you want to work with strings, you can of course use basically a string here. So this is a string, but then what if you want to have a longer string, so a bunch of code in here or a bunch of text in here? Then you would use a text area. So this here is a text area. And in text areas, you can of course enter strings as well. In order to create a text area, you simply need to use the text area attribute, as you can see here, within squared brackets. Now, what if you want to have a lot more text than just this? What if you want to have many lines in here? Then you can use the multi-line attribute. So now you might wonder, what's the difference between the two? Well, when you write text in a text area, the text will behave like a paragraph. So when the line ends, it will move automatically to the next line. But in the multi-line, it's continuous. So here you can see it goes all the way further to the right. So you have scrolling towards the right, and that's how you could see it. Even though there are no scroll options here, we cannot really scroll correctly here, but you can basically have a super wide line, a very long line. And here it's not possible. So once you enter more text here, it will go to the next line automatically. In order to create a multi-line, you can just use the multi-line attribute within squared brackets again. Sometimes you want to display a value in the inspector even though it's private. So here, for example, this multi-line location is a public variable. If I make this private, it will disappear from the inspector. There you are, it's gone, it's not there anymore. Now, what if you still want to display a private variable? You can use serialize field. This attribute allows you to display private variables, such as this object number integer. As you can see, it's here. So this is our object number, which is a private variable. In case you want to have it the other way around, so you have a public variable that you don't want to display in the inspector, you can use hide in inspector. This attribute will allow you to hide even public variables from the inspector. So isEnd, this boolean, will not appear in the inspector, as you can see or not see here. The next attribute is a little more advanced, but at the same time pretty cool. So let's look at it. We have this, right-click this variable name. This is just a header text, but then we have this random scale, which is a variable. Once I right-click on it, this little button pops up, and I can click on it and I will get a random scale or a random number. So you can see here it's 2.25, and once I do that once again, it will give me another random value. And that is pretty cool if you want to have it in the play mode. So once you're in game mode and you test your game and you just want to have random values, or once you want to execute some code directly through interacting with the inspector, that's what you can do. So let's look at the context menu item. In order to use the context menu item, you simply need to use this keyword here, context menu item, then the text that you want to appear on the button, and the method that you want to call once the button is clicked. So in my case, I have this little method here called random scale, and this will give me a random scale between 0 and 5, or a random value between 0 and 5. So once I click on this context menu item, this random scale method will be called, and I'll get a value for random scale, which is this private variable. And because it's private, I need to add serialize field in order to make it visible. What if you want to be able to execute some code outside of a specific variable that you need to click on to get this specific item here? Well, you can also have an option to add it to the script. Right click here at the top. So directly at the script level itself, I can right click on the script here at the top and I'll get a new option. So how do I add that? Well, I can add that by using the context menu attribute. You can achieve that with the context menu attribute. As you can see here, you just need to use the context menu keyword, and then in brackets, you enter the text that should be displayed as the context menu item name. And then the method that should be executed once you click on that button. In my case, it's going to change the bool, and it will set isEnd to true. Another neat little attribute is the help URL attribute. It adds this little button here, which is this question mark, and once you click on it, it will open up a window with the link that you have assigned. In our case, it's the channel link. So how do you add that? Let's say you have a project where you have a documentation for each class and it's somewhere in a URL, somewhere on a website. Well, then you would add this. And the code looks like that. So you need to add it at the top of the class. So here, help URL and then the URL that you want to send the user to once he clicks on the question mark. So that's how you can achieve this functionality. The next attribute is super useful when you want to make sure that the specific component cannot be deleted inside of the inspector. So in my case, I added a rigid body here, and now let me try to get rid of it. So remove that component, and it says can't remove rigid body because attributes example script depends on it. So I have now made sure that a specific component cannot be deleted or removed from the game object that has my script attributes example. So how can I achieve that? You can simply add this line here, require component. So this is the attribute that we're going to use, and then type of, in this case, rigid body. So I say it requires a rigid body. This script needs a rigid body to work because maybe we access it somewhere in our class, and that's exactly what this require component is useful for. The next attribute that we're going to look at is the selection base attribute. This is extremely useful when you are working in huge projects where you have game objects which have many sub-objects or many children. So here, sphere is the parent game object, and this sphere here is the child game object. Now, if you select it in the scene, then what I want to happen is that the parent object is selected. So now let me show you. You can see the parent itself is selected and not the child. Let's say you have a tree, and that tree consists of 50 small little game objects. And now if you click on the tree, you don't want to click on, for example, a certain leaf. You want to click on the tree. You want to have the tree and edit the tree. And that's exactly where this feature comes in handy, this selection base attribute. So if I select a child, automatically the parent will be selected. In order to add this functionality, you simply need to use the selection base keyword on top of your class. In this case, our attribute example script class, which is basically the script that is assigned to the parent which we're using, which is our huge sphere. What if you want to add a certain component to your game? Well, you can select a bunch of components from here. For example, I could add a joint or a new collider, even though this one has already a sphere collider, so our sphere already has something. But what if I want to be able to add my own components directly from this window? So directly selecting component and then my menu, new component. So how can I achieve this? How can I create something that adds my own component? So let's just add this new component, and you will see that a new component has been added, which is our script, our attributes example script. So it was automatically added. Now let me remove those two just so you see that it's actually working. So I select the sphere and then I go to components, I go to my menu and I add a new component, and that will now add this script to it, which is our attributes example script. In order to achieve that, you can use the add component menu. Here you just need to enter the name of the path that you want to have. So in my case, my menu, and then the new component. That will be the name of the component that will be added. In our case, the attributes example script is renamed to new component inside of the inspector once we add it to our game object. Now let's come to the last of the attributes, and that is execute in edit mode. And you might have noticed that the size of our sphere has been changed. So now it's 222 and it was 111 before. Now, how did I achieve that? Well, of course, I could have changed it directly from here. I could have added it manually, but that's a little old-fashioned. Let's make it a little more spicy and let's do it via code directly. So usually if you want to run any code, you need to start the game. So you need to go into the play mode. But what if you want to run some code outside of the play mode directly within the scene? Well, then you can use this attribute called execute in edit mode. Let's look at it. In order to run it, first of all, you need to add this attribute to your class. So execute in edit mode. And then whatever you add to the start method will be executed in the edit mode. In our case, it scales the game from 111 to 222. Now let's rescale it to 444 and see what happens. Let's save the script and go back to Unity and see what happens with our scale here. Now let's check it out. And you can see that the scale is 444. You can also test this by removing the component, then changing the scale, let's say to 111, and then adding the component back to our object. And then you can see it directly is increased. So the size is scaled up to 444. All right, so now you have seen the 15 different attributes and how they change your inspector and how you can use them for your own project. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please leave a like. And if you have any questions or remarks, then leave a comment. And if you loved it, then consider subscribing or even buying my course. You can find the link in the description.